Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this April 2nd edition of Alaska Weather. I'm David Percy. Up first on the hazardous weather graphic, got a blizzard warning continuing for the western Arctic coast until midnight tonight for winds gusting to 50 miles per hour, creating whiteout conditions in some areas, especially around Point Lay. And that's due to end at midnight tonight. Conditions should improve a little bit there to at least bring it up above blizzard conditions. But wind chills will be around 50 degrees below zero with ambient air temperatures remaining below zero. Otherwise, a wind advisory into early this evening for the central interior for winds gusting, upwards of 25 to 40 miles an hour, 25 gusts 40 miles an hour. Especially the higher elevations there in the central interior, like Utopia Creek, Indian Mountain, for example. And that's due to end the next few hours later this evening. And from there, looking at satellite imagery, pretty vivid low pressure area moving up toward the Panhandle, pushing a pretty good front into the southern coast of the Panhandle with increasing wind and rain, winds gusting anywhere from 35 to 50 miles an hour along the coast, with the 50 to 55 mile per hour wind gusts along the south coast, such as Cape Decision, for example. Sitka seeing winds gusting 30 to 40 miles an hour with increasing rain, anywhere from a quarter to half an inch fallen today over the southern Panhandle, and much lighter amounts up to the north to none at all, actually earlier showers ending along the eastern North Gulf Coast. Not a bad day across the southern interior. Some scattered showers, also some clearing periods around Bristol Bay and into the Kuskokwim Delta, across all of southern Alaska, Cook Inlet, Matanuska-Susitna Valley, and into the Copper River Basin. You can see a band of clouds there from the Yukon River north of Eagle, down across the Fairbanks area, coming across the Chena Ridge there, and then across the northern Kuskokwim Valley out to the southern Norton Sound area. Areas of light snow associated with that. Minchumina and Nenana both picking up anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of snow over the last 12 hours, with light snow continuing in the afternoon, with some snow shower activity extending into the mountainous terrain around Fairbanks and off to the northeast there. And then drier again as you get up toward the Brooks Range, with windy conditions along the western Arctic coast and through the passes of the Brooks Range. Winds gusting Howard Pass as high as 50 to 55 miles an hour. And then the white area there in the North Slope, that's temperatures remaining well below zero even into the afternoon. But there are some clouds up there along the eastern and western Arctic coast as well. And out to the west, just a dissipating band of clouds hung up over the Pribilof Islands. It really scatters out and breaks up as it moves in toward the Alaska Peninsula there. And then a lot of unstable cold air aloft moving in over the central Aleutians, with numerous snow showers associated with that coming into the Adak area. Not too bad over the Unalaska area today. And there's that low center, west-southwest of the Panhandle, with the front pushing up toward the coastline, bringing the increased wind and rain with that into the southern Panhandle. Otherwise, just scattered rain and snow showers to the North Gulf Coast. And then over the inland areas there, that band of snow along associated with a trough, actually almost like a frontal boundary there with the colder Arctic air, temperatures in the teens to near zero to the north of that front, some cases staying below zero the entire afternoon today, especially on up toward the Brooks Range with the windy conditions, that tight gradient there, creating those gusty pass winds, and that also keeping it windy on the western Arctic coast with the blowing snow and the blizzard conditions. Otherwise, a few light snow showers on the eastern Arctic coast, and then numerous areas of snow, cloud cover, and snow showers out over the Bering Sea on down toward the Aleutians, with 989 millibar low near Cape Newenham there, but not much of a gradient, so the winds aren't all that strong over the Bering Sea or the Aleutians, with tighter gradient back up to the north. For tonight, that front moves inland into western Canada and weakens, so the rainfall will begin to let up, especially behind the front along with the winds, but you can see the gradient with the main low center, with the low staying off the coast there, edging inland or moving north-northeast. So that's going to make for a windy, wet night along the central and southern southeast coast. A little bit better conditions as far as winds go, and amount of precipitation over the northern panhandle. Look for periods of rain and snow for the northeastern North Gulf Coast. That'll be more of a shower condition from Prince William Sound along the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula on down to Kodiak Island. Snow showers covering Bristol Bay, chance of anywhere across Bristol Bay in the southwest interior and the coastline there. And that trough keeps snow showers going in the central interior. It's not really moving too much. But northern Cook Inlet into the Mananuska-Susitna Valley, much of the Copper River Basin up to the Alaska Range will remain dry. And it stays pretty windy there through the passes of the central and western Brooks Range with that tighter gradient. And a little bit more wind in the west-northwest direction there from a west-northwest direction over the central and western Aleutians, maybe gusts 30 miles an hour or so with snow showers. And for tomorrow, that same pattern, westerly winds, snow, and snow showers across the entire Aleutian chain into the Alaska Peninsula, with another surge of moisture and snow showers coming down around that low off the southwest coast into the Pribilof Islands, and just a chance of some flurries maybe catching the eastern St. Lawrence Island area, otherwise mostly clear and dry through the Bering Strait and the Seward Peninsula. So moisture working into Norton Sound. And look for snow showers possibly anywhere over the central and southern part of the state. Rain and snow showers continue for the North Gulf Coast, and it stays wet over the Panhandle. But Monday could be a dry day with some sunshine over the southeast coast. Maybe a risk of a few lingering showers along the central and north coast. No change for the North Gulf Coast. Still a chance of rain and snow showers. Cloudy skies with snow showers over much of the southern two-thirds of the state. And still some snow shower activity with that weak trough moving into the Arctic coast there. And it stays cold and snowy out over the eastern Bering Sea down to the Aleutians. Lows tonight, 15 to 25 below zero for the north slope and the Arctic coast. Anywhere from 0 to 10 below for the central interior. Single numbers, Tanana Valley down to McGrath and Nikolai. Otherwise 20 to 30 on down toward the southwest coast. Lower 30s for the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, in the 20s, south central Alaska, and 35 to 40 for the lows for the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow, 40 to 45 for the southeast coast, upper 30s to lower 40s, southern Alaska, to near 40 Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, upper 30s for the Aleutians, near freezing for the Pribilofs, and below zero from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, 15 to 25 for the central interior. Lows the following morning on Monday morning. Again, back to 15 to maybe 30 below zero for the north slope there. And again, 5 below to 5 above central interior. 25 to 30 south central Alaska. Upper 20s Bristol Bay. 5 to 20 for the Kuskokwim Valley. And teens along the southwest coast. Mid-teens for the Pribilofs. And lower to mid-30s for the Panhandle. It'll be followed by highs mid-40s to near 50 for the southeast coast. Upper 30s to lower 40s south central Alaska, 15 to 25 in the central interior, and 0 to 10 below for the north slope and Arctic coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather, some IFR in the north slope, IFR central interior there along the mid and upper Yukon River Valley, into the 40-mile country, some IFR along the Panhandle, and a big area of IFR from the northern Bering Sea into the southwest coast, Bristol Bay to the Aleutian Range, across the Kuskokwim Valley to the western Alaska Range. Marginal VFR for the Aleutians and central and southwest Bering with some scattered areas of VFR thrown in. For the afternoon Sunday, a lot less in the IFR category, still some up there on the north slope and the northern Panhandle, otherwise marginal VFR, North Gulf Coast, most of Cook Inlet, south of the Forelands, most of the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, Copper River Basin, Susitna Valley, VFR in the northern Cook Inlet, Anchorage, maybe Palmer, but the Mananuska Valley, mostly marginal. Areas of VFR over the northern interior, and some areas of VFR in the increase, southern Bering Sea to Atka, eastward to Unalaska Island. And for the morning Monday, marginal VFR for the St. Lawrence Island area, IFR pretty well entrenched over the southwest interior from Norton Sound on down to the northeast Bristol Bay area in the western Alaska Range. Also for the mid and upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, IFR, and that zone extends down to possibly as far south as the Talkeetnas, otherwise marginal for the Copper River Basin. IFR in the North Gulf Coast Range, as well as western Prince William Sound, over to Yakutat into Lincoln Glacier Bay, marginal VFR to the south to about the central panhandle, then VFR for the remainder of the southeast coast with marginal VFR along the coast. And for Monday afternoon, marginal VFR central Arctic coast and most of the north slope down across the eastern Brooks Range into the Yukon Flats over to Eagle. And then marginal VFR across the southern portion of Alaska, a couple areas of IFR possibly on the western Alaska Range, and in the North Gulf Coast, eastern North Gulf Coast in the mountain range there, possibly southern Copper River Basin, but not too much. Mostly VFR for the Panhandle, and areas of VFR from Cook Inlet down to Fognak Island to Chiniak Marmot Bay area, including the Kodiak State Airport. Looks to be VFR possibly for the Pribilof Islands up to the western St. Lawrence Island area. Otherwise, the Bering Sea mostly marginal, as well as the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula area. Passes Anatuvik, VFR. Marginal VFR for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, mostly marginal tomorrow. And a VFR day for rainy. There'll be cloud zone, overcast skies, but it should be a VFR condition. And for windy, marginal VFR. Isabel, VFR. Inman test, occasionally marginal for the day Sunday. Same thing for Tanita, occasional marginal VFR, eastern and western approaches, as well as through the pass. Portage, marginal VFR. Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing level, not much to look at here. The surface north of the Aleutians, but south of the Pribilofs, cutting across Kodiak Island, up along or just off the North Gulf Coast, and then southeastward to Dixon Entrance. Icing, areas of mixed icing, southeast Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, as well as the western Aleutians, and then areas of mixed to rime icing of isolated moderate variety and across the southeast coast. Otherwise, less of a threat, just a slight chance for the Kenai Peninsula and the Prince William Sound. And the jet stream, several cold upper level lows there across the just north of the Aleutians to just north of the Alaska Peninsula and then the Gulf. That keeping the main jet well south of a forecast area, state of Alaska, and otherwise at 9,000 feet, southwest 55 knots there, northern panhandle. Easterlies 45 knots, north slope in the Arctic coast, and then west-northwesterlies at 45 knots across the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians. And at 3,000 feet, 55 knot easterlies there, catching the area from about Point Lay down to Cape Lisburne. Otherwise, south 45 knots across the northern panhandle, west-northwest 35 across the western Alaska Peninsula. And turbulence-wise, northern interior looks pretty bumpy. You got a considerable moderate chop, especially for small aircraft from from Kotzebue Sound and the northern Seward Peninsula eastward across Kobuk, Koyukuk, Upper Yukon Valley areas, and also for the DeLong Mountains, western Brooks Range looks a little bumpy. And then the Alaska Peninsula, Fox Islands, look for considerable moderate chop there, as well as areas of the southeast coast. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
When you think of a national park, you probably envision wide open natural spaces, undisturbed by human activity. There are indeed such places, but even in some of the most remote areas of a place like Kenai Fjords National Park in Alaska, the mark of man is present. Marine debris is a menace to the farthest reaches of our globe, and even designated national park lands are not immune. In the summer of 2009, the Resurrection Bay Conservation Alliance, a grassroots conservation organization based in Seward, Alaska, decided to do something about the marine debris fouling the beaches of Kenai Fjords National Park. Marine debris coordinator Tim Johnson had first-hand experience with the issue.
The summer before, my wife and I, Michelle, had done a paddle from Seward, sea kayak paddle from Seward to Homer. Really, our eyes were open to some areas that we didn't realize there was so much accumulation. It was very deceiving up front. You couldn't really get a feel for the extent and impact of it. You've got this nice high tide line that's quite pristine, and you really don't get a picture for the impact, the amount of debris in that area until you get behind those storm berms. You get back into the lagoons and the vegetation around those lagoons. And then you see the absolute extent back into that veg and how intertwined and enmeshed these decades of trash deposition. So we were just appalled by that and said we got to get something together on a larger scale.
The Resurrection Bay Conservation Alliance is a local nonprofit community organization, and they have been instrumental in helping the Park Service obtain funding to get larger boats to help move the debris, and they get volunteer labor and organize the work trips. And so it's really a partnership between the Park Service and the community to help get out and really get a project done that in and of itself any one group couldn't do on their own.
Most of that trash was baggable. However, there were large items, huge, piles of hauser line, for example, that we just had to hoist up onto the boat.
The volunteers didn't just bag, haul, and hoist the garbage, but also carefully recorded what types of debris were collected.
In many ways, the debris itself is a resource. Archaeologists use middens, the trash heaps, as a way of analyzing past cultures. And in one sense, marine debris is a form of a midden. It's a trash heap that left for the future would be something that people could use to analyze our culture. It may not say the best things about our culture or everything that we want, but we need to be able to document what we've done so that we can preserve that legacy, make sure that we as a society don't forget what we've been doing.
We had two larger categories of marine debris that we picked up. Commercial fishing means like, say, gill nets, large hauser lines, anything that would be associated with more of a commercial fishing scale. And then the second category was more recreational fishing and household, which would be general plastics, things like that. So we had about a 75% of the commercial fishing marine debris element, and about 25% of the recreational and household further out the bay. And we had the exact opposite the closer we got to Seward. Within the bay, it was about 25% commercial fishing versus 75% recreational fishing and household.
The trash is not just unsightly for park visitors, but also poses threats to wildlife and marine habitat.
Really one of the larger issues now that you go to this plastic that can really get into the food web and affect the food web differently than something like glass.
These substances, for instance, all these polystyrene blocks that are breaking down into all these little crumbly bits are further breaking down on a microscopic level, and how much of an impact that has, in this ecosystem is yet to be determined, but I think it's got pretty high potential.
Well known that sea turtles will eat plastic bags floating in the water. They look like jellyfish to a sea turtle, and obviously a plastic bag doesn't go well in the digestive system of a turtle. Albatross will see small pieces of plastic floating on the surface and think they're small fish and other food sources and eat that in their stomachs, especially in some of the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands, they'll find dead albatross that have starved to death with a full stomach, and it's full of pieces of plastic.
We're affecting our local areas this way, but we need to be thinking about it from more of a state and global, international scale. And most importantly, to try and focus on prevention of it coming in the first place. Because we're just going to see this continuing, to build up on our beaches unless we're able to get a little bit more of an approach on prevention on the front end.
Marine debris is really a global problem, in all the oceans, and there are many different sources. Global shipping is one. Fishing debris from commercial fishing, recreational boating activity on land, stuff blowing off land, washing down streams, people just throwing stuff on the shore.
Though the problem can seem overwhelming, Johnson remains upbeat about making a positive difference.
No, you gotta start locally. You gotta take control of what you can do, and make something with that, and try and move on from there.
Overall, more than 9 tons of debris was removed from the beaches of Kenai Fjords National Park and transported back to Seward to be deposited in a landfill.
People gave a lot to the project in order to make it happen. That was awesome. One of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. Being able to put that large of a group of volunteers together, dedicated volunteers to put that much effort and give that much time and pull all the different agencies together to see it all happen was incredible. It was incredible. Yeah, very fulfilling experience.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at sea ice analysis. Still some ice down around St. Paul Island, but the main pack ice north of St. George, a little bit there. And from there, moving on to the coastal water forecast, we've got small craft advisories for the south coast. South winds 30 knots. With seas just under 20 feet. Small craft advisories on the north coast as well. South to southeasterlies there at 25 knots. And the northern inner channels, winds will be south 15 knots. And for Stevens Passage, southeast winds 20, gusts 35 knots for the day Sunday. Clarence Strait, winds southerly at 20 knots with 10-foot seas. Those will fall back to easterly at 15 knots for Clarence Strait on the day Monday. Otherwise, Stevens Passage looking north at 20 knots, variable 20 knots for Lincoln Glacier Bay. Small craft advisories on the south coast for northwest winds, 25 knots, and variable to west winds, 15 to 20 knots for the north coast. Prince William Sound and northern Cook Inlet, northeast winds, 15 knots with 3-foot seas. Small craft advisories for the eastern North Gulf Coast for east winds at 25 knots with 11-foot seas. Southern Cook Inlet, winds will be north at 20 knots. Kamishak Bay, northeasterlies at 20 knots. And the Barren Islands, north 15 knots with 7-foot seas. Western North Gulf Coast, northeast winds 20 knots with 8-foot seas. And the day Monday, kind of a variable wind pattern at 10 knots, light and variable winds for Cook Inlet, seas pretty slight at 2 feet or less, and for Kamishak Bay, west winds 15 knots, northwest at 20 for the Barren Islands, and north 20 for the western North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound, northeast winds on the light side at 10 knots, and the eastern North Gulf Coast, southeast winds at 20 knots. Kodiak Island, west-northwest winds 15 to 20 knots. Alaska Peninsula small craft advisories, west winds 25 to 30 knots, and Bristol Bay looking at a south wind at 10 knots with 3-foot seas. And for Monday, Kodiak Island, west winds 20 to 25 knots. Alaska Peninsula, west winds 25 knots, southwest 20-knot winds in the forecast for Bristol Bay with 5-foot seas. Fox Islands, west winds 25 to 30 knots, seas 10 to 16 feet. Adak and Atka, west winds 25 to 30 knots with 9 to 17-foot seas. And from Amchitka to Shimia, winds will be out of the west Sunday at 30 knots. And for Monday, Shimiadakiska, west winds 30 knots. Samchitka Island, northwest winds 25 knots. That same forecast good also for Adak and Atka, as well as Unimak Island. On Alaska Island, winds about the same, but more of a west-northwest direction, 20 to 25 knots. Southwest coast, on average, north winds at 15 knots. North winds 20 knots for the St. Matthew Island area, northwest at 20 for the Pribilofs, and brisk wind advisories for St. Lawrence Island for north winds at 30 knots. Norton Sound, northeast winds at 20 knots. Those will turn northerly for Norton Sound on Monday at about 20 knots. Brisk wind advisories continue for St. Lawrence Island, northerlies at 30 knots. Yukon Delta Coast, north winds at 20 knots. Kuskokwim Delta Coast, northwest 15. And for the Pribilofs on up to St. Matthew Island, winds will be northwest at 20 knots. For the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, northeast winds 20 knots. Brisk wind advisories for the western Arctic coast there for northeast at 30. Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, gale warnings, northeast winds 40 knots, and then brisk wind advisories from Cape Thompson to Wales for northeasterlies at 25 knots. And for Monday, gale warnings continue from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort for sustained northeast winds at 35 knots. Brisk wind advisories from Cape Thompson to Wales. Northeast winds 30 knots. Central and western Arctic coast, north winds at 20 knots. And now a light west breeze there for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, only at 10 knots. For tonight, blizzard warning continues to the western Arctic coast until midnight tonight. Wind chills to 50 degrees below zero. Winds gusting 50 miles an hour will create some whiteout conditions in some areas. Otherwise, dry south of the Brooks Range into the Kobuk Valley, northwest coast Seward Peninsula. Snow showers, central interior, chance of rain or snow, North Gulf Coast. Rain and wind over the Panhandle, especially south. And for Sunday, it stays pretty snowy out over the Aleutians and the Bering Sea. And wet over the Panhandle, scattered showers along the North Gulf Coast, some snow shower activity in the interior, as well as the North Slope and Arctic coast. And then for Monday, looks like a dry day, at least in part for the Panhandle, with some partial afternoon clearing. Rain and snow showers to the North Gulf Coast, scattered snow showers over the central and southern interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.